My name is Jeff. I'm a senior keeper here at Brookfield Zoo. I work in the reptile first department. Today we're here in the swamp building with our two Orinoco crocodiles. We have two sisters. They were hatched in 2008. They're about 12 years old. They were hatched at the Dallas Road Aquarium, and they arrived here, I think 2012. So they've gotten a lot bigger since they arrived here. Our latest weight was around 150 pounds, so we suspect they're quite larger now. These guys are from South America, specifically the Orinoco River Basin. These guys are mainly fish eaters, but they'll pretty much take anything they can grab. Here at the zoo, we feed them fish, rats. We have these crocodile biscuits, which are a bunch of ground up stuff put together. And they are like candy to them. So we'll throw them a couple biscuits. We'll try to get them to separate a little bit so they don't go biting each other. Crocodiles in the wild don't move that much. They're ambush predators, so they'll sit and wait. When something comes by, they'll grab them. So a lot of times at the zoo, people always ask us, are they alive? Yes, they are alive. They just don't move that much. These guys are cold-blooded. They're ectotherms. So they use their environment to heat up. So during the day, they'll bask on the hot beaches and warm beaches, getting that nice UV sun. And then they'll go out and hunt.
Which one is Carlita and which one is Buttercup?
I believe Carlitas are one in the water, Buttercup's on the right. Crocodilians are very territorial, and they use a couple of different ways to demonstrate that. One of the main ones is body position and body posture. So when they're in the water, they can float higher or lower. So if they're floating higher and you see more of them out of the water, they're more the dominant animal. They're making themselves look bigger. If crocodiles swim by each other, the less dominant will typically swim underneath the more dominant, kind of like it's a submissive behavior.
How many teeth do they have?
Ooh, they have a lot, and they regrow. So a lot of times when we're cleaning the pool, we'll find old shed teeth. One of the big differences between alligators and crocodiles is their fourth tooth on the top jaw. You can typically see it. Sorry, I'm confusing myself. It's either top jaw or bottom jaw. I'm doubting myself now. But on crocodiles, you can see that tooth, and alligators you can't. Another typical way to tell the difference between an alligator and crocodile is the shape of the snout. So crocodiles typically have a V shape. You can see very much. These guys have more triangle-shaped snouts. Alligators have a more U-shaped snouts. Alligators are also only found in North America and China. The Chinese alligator is a lot smaller.
What other crocodiles do we have at Brookfield Zoo?
We have a African dwarf crocodile in Habitat Africa forest, where we have a male and female there. And they are about the size of about the snout to these guys, to about mid-tail, but way less weight. They only weigh about 80 pounds or less. Those guys are more forest dwellers, and they will actually walk up into the forest and lay nests in termite mounds. Whereas these guys are more hole nest diggers, and they'll dig their nests into the beach, and the babies will all come out into the water. Now, these guys are critically endangered. There's only about 1,500 of them left in the wild. They are an SSP managed species.
What does SSP stand for?
Species Survival Program. So all the zoos kind of band together to manage their breeding, to make sure that we're kind of doing it right.
So what's their favorite thing to eat, and how often are they fed?
These guys are fed 2 to 3 times a week. Their favorite thing to eat is probably large rats. Some crocodilian species and alligators really like crickets, even though they're so small, just because they're moved. Unfortunately, we tried it with these guys, and they were not a fan. So they were a big fan of the fish and rats.
So do they coexist with any of the birds here at the swamp?
No. So there is a very fine mesh separating all of these birds. These crocodiles would love for there to be no mesh because they would have lots of fun with the birds. The birds would not enjoy it. We've had an orange tree or lemon tree in here before, and the fruit would fall into the pool, and the crocodiles would eat the fruit. So anything that drops into the water is fair game.
Do they spend most of their time in the water or on the land?
I'd say about 60-40, most of the time on land basking, but then 40% in the water. We have, our rocks are heated to ensure that they get the right proper temperature and can self-regulate. We also have a lot of logs and breakups in the exhibit. Because they're so territorial, we need places for them to retreat to and to separate visual breakups.
So if they're not getting along, you got
They're
one
not
over
getting along,
here, and then one can take herself over there to
Exactly.
separate.
We got 2 pools for them.
Gotcha. Do we still have alligators?
We do not have any alligators. We changed the alligators out for these guys. We went more of a South American theme for the most part in the first part of the swamp building, where we have some false water cobras and some other South American green basilisk species.
And how old can they live?
These guys can live 70 to 80 years. When they're adults, they have no natural predators, so they can live a very long time. When they're babies, almost anything can eat them. But once they get to an adult size, nothing really they got to worry about. Again, these guys are only about 12, so they've got a long way to go, and they're still growing. Orinoco's, they've reported getting as big as 22 feet, but that's like a person getting 7 foot tall. It doesn't happen that often. So we're much more likely to get around 13 feet, potentially 17 feet.
How deep can they dive?
I don't know, to be honest. I know saltwater crocodiles can dive very deep. These guys are more of a river species, so I would imagine they only typically dive 50 feet max. But I imagine they're quite capable of going deeper. They can hold their breath for a very long time. And when they're floating at the surface, they look like a log. The end of their nostril kind of floats up just above the water to where they only have to put up the size of your palm print out of the water to breathe, and the rest of them can be underneath. So if the water's murky, you ain't seeing these guys.
So you mentioned that they're ambush predators. So how exactly do they catch their prey?
By surprise. So they'll sit in the water, or in regards to fish, a lot of times they'll submerge, have their mouth open, and when a fish swims by, they'll close their mouth shut, and they'll grab it.
What are all those bumps on their back for?
So those are scutes and osteoderms. Underneath the scutes, the skin, there's osteoderms, so those are bony plates. So essentially that's armor and protection. With crocodiles being so defensive and territorial, they get into a lot of arguments. So those bony plates are to protect them from other crocodiles and also predators when they're younger. Big cats can grab them and pull them and drag them. If you've ever seen some of the YouTube videos, the crazy big cats can pull them out when they're younger and out of the water. So that kind of serves as their protection. They also, in regards to like the leather trade, back in the day, these guys were heavily hunted because they're so beautiful for their leather. And based on the scute and bony plates patterns on these crocodiles, you can tell what species the leather is. So if you have an old purse, you can probably look up what kind of leather it is from what animal based on the patterns. And a lot of wildlife inspectors and things use that to determine what species below there is.
So tortoises and turtles have scoots too.
Yes.
Are they
There's
do they feel similar, or is it just the general name?
It's more the general name. They're both definitely hard. When we've had to grab our African dwarf crocodiles up, we have had keepers cut themselves on the scoots. They're a little sharp.
Holy cow.
And they're very hard. So they definitely do a good job of protecting them.
So can you remind us, are these animals endangered?
Yes, so these guys are critically endangered. There's only about, I think it was around 30 or 100 in zoos. Yeah, there's only around 31 in zoos, only about 1,500 in the wild, mainly from loss of habitat. People removing sand is a big part of their habitat degradation, where they nest and occupy. So they're here to kind of serve as their ambassadors and to let everybody else know what's going on. And these guys are more of a keystone species. If you find one of these guys, you know the system's pretty healthy because it can support a large adult animal.
So is there anything that people in the Midwest can do to help these crocodiles?
I would just say pretty much get educated. You can look up local conservation efforts in Venezuela. They do breeding and then release some babies into the wild. So you can look up those conservation efforts and support those. There's also, within the AZA, we have taxon advisory groups, and we have a specific one for crocodiles, where they give grants to researchers studying crocodilians, whether how to breed them, better save them, a number of different things. And that's always a good place to look up more information and to see where conservation efforts are being done.
How fast can they move?
Very fast. In relation to, we are very careful around these guys. Whenever we go into the exhibit, we have 2 people, just to be safe. Once they get to a certain size, we'll probably shift them and not go in with them. I'm not sure exactly the speed, but especially in quick bursts, they are very, very quick. They can maintain that for a rather long time. In Australia, they've got a species, some of the crocodiles can gallop. I know Cuban crocodiles can gallop.
Wow.
So however fast you need to go to get up to galloping speed is pretty impressive. These girls are a little bit large, so I don't think they can get quite that fast. But their initial jump out of the water, I wouldn't be able to react or have time to react.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I wouldn't want a crocodile chasing me. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I have one more question for you. What's your favorite thing about crocodiles?
Ooh, favorite thing about crocodiles. One of my favorite things is how smart they are. Alligators can learn their names, and they will come to you when they're called. These girls are target trained to follow a target, and we've moved them throughout the exhibit. We can get them to get weights. You can train them to a crate. That makes our jobs less stressful. It makes them less stressful. Just the fact of how smart and intelligent they are. I've seen crazy amounts of video of them doing some crazy things. I know an alligator, there was a crack in the exhibit and a crayfish got in it, and the alligator moved his tail to create current and push the crayfish out of the crack and was then able to eat it. So they're able to use the resources available to them to hunt and survive. It's pretty impressive.
Cool.
These are our 2 Orinoco crocodiles. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time here at Brookfield Zoo.